I was going to remind you, so that's great.
Thank
So,
goodness. We're
hey,
recording.
that's awesome. Hey, everybody. First, I was super excited to meet this person that they were talking about, Mary Dale was talking about in the intro. I will tell you this, I have a great marketing team, so they are very kind and saying great things. Quick intro about the Winkler Group. We're based in Charleston. We do two things. One, strategic planning for nonprofits, and secondly, we do campaign planning and manage campaigns. We have 13 people across the country working with us, 13 team members, and we are managing campaigns today. We have a campaign that's $1 million, and everything in between. The biggest campaign that we're doing right now is $950 million. So they run across the gambit, and so I share that with you because I think it's just important for you to know that as we talk about this conversation today, and we talk about major gifts, we talk about capital campaigns, some trends. I think that it's really important for you to know that major gifts can be anything you want them to be. You don't have to be a huge organization. Every single organization, every single one of you today ought to be thinking about major gifts. The threshold of the dollar amount that you might consider a major gift is really different. For the $1 million campaign that we're doing, it's a $5,000 gift. That's a major gift. That's what they call it. For the $950 million campaign, it's 100,000. So while the amounts are different, the what we do and how we get there, those are the same. So I'm going to share my screen with you. Get this shared. And I'm going to walk you through, but I still want to put the gallery up. I hate that Zoom likes to change the view. I have all the pictures. I have all your pictures up because I want to be able to see and hear you. And can you everyone see the screen? Taking the mystery out of? Okay, wonderful. So we're going to start here. What I want to spend some time, and if I look away, it's because I'm looking at the screen that has the slide deck on it. I want to spend some time talking with you about some trends that we're seeing across our practice and across the whole sector. And then I want to talk to you about major gifts specifically and things that you can do to really grow your major gift program. Or if you're not doing major gifts today and it's something that you want to do, there's a great place to start. Start at the beginning. Start with one major donor prospect. But I want to give you some helpful tips and tricks. And then lastly, if you're thinking about a campaign, and I will say this right now, if you're not thinking about a campaign, you really should be considering it right now. That's not a plug for the Winkler Group. I'm just going to tell you what you hear from me today is going to let you know, as fundraising professionals, that donors who have capacity are giving like crazy right now. We expect to see this continue through this year. And in fact, we feel so strongly about it. uh, we're doing a series of talks and blogs and papers. We're calling 2021 the year of the transformational gift. That's how much impact we think this kind of giving is going to have on our sector. So we're going to walk through quite a few things today. I come from, as Mary Dale said, I come from a YMCA background. One of my first jobs in the Y was to manage an after-school program. I wasn't the on-site manager, but we had 10,000 kids across 3 counties in our after-school program. I got really used to chaos early on in my career. And so, what I'm saying that is, if you have questions, don't feel like you have to wait till the end. You can ask them. You are welcome. If you do, we have the right? Can we take ourselves off mute? Is that possible? Okay, you can take yourself off of mute. Ask a question at any time. You can chat the question, and Mary Dell will monitor that for us and let us know. And I'll save some time at the end. We also know that if we run over, if we're doing questions and we run over, I'm happy to stay a few minutes and continue answering questions for you. So let's talk first about the fundamentals. Why should you be doing major gifts and why and campaigns? Why consider those right now? Well, one, they really are a critical tool to sustainability. And I will tell you this right now. You'll hear me talk about this more in a few minutes, but that's what donors are saying today. Donors that have the capacity to give major gifts are really thinking about sustainability. And when you think about where you spend your time every day, you want to spend your time where you're going to have the greatest impact. And if it's me, again, this is literally my 30th year in this profession. When I think about where do I spend my time, I think about if I can get out there and talk to major donors, then I have the ability to raise infinitely more money than if I'm out there doing things like events or the annual fund. So You might be focused on the annual fund and that's your job. And I think that's great because annual fund, first of all, is critical. It's about sustainability as well. It is also for us the breeding ground for major gifts and for us to grow our donor relationships. And if you're not doing major gifts today, now is the time to think about doing it. They're also essential for long-term goals. I love when we talk to an organization about the potential for a campaign, and let's pretend like they want to raise $1 million. There's always going to be a board member that says, "Well, if we just get every donor who gives to us to give $1,000, then we'll hit our goal." Well, we're fundraisers. We know that doesn't work. But what does work though is that stretching donors who have a combination of high capacity and high affinity for you, that's a winning recipe for you to be able to raise more money on an annual basis and obviously to support bigger priorities as well. And we've seen this happen. Partnering with organizations during emergencies is one thing that major donors, they're there. And what I love about major donors is they don't just bring their dollars, they also bring their feedback, their ideas, they bring their business acumen, right? They have perspective that oftentimes we don't have. And it's important to lean on them for that. So you really develop relationships that are much deeper than just a donor. These are relationships of people who want to volunteer their time, feedback, energy, and expertise. How do you do it? Where do you start? I do a lot of workshops on how do you start a major gift program. We don't have the full day to talk about all of that, but I would say this because I get this question all the time: is where do you start? First, look at all your donors today. Your best major donor, your next best major donor, is going to come from a donor who already gives to you. It's a fact. We always say, oh, if we can only get so and so to give to this campaign because they've got so much money. Well, if they've never given to you, the likelihood that they're going to jump from never giving to being your biggest donor is pretty rare. Does happen, but it's pretty rare. But I would say the first place to start is to look at all of your donors over the last 3 years. Take a good hard look. Use a tool like a wealth screening. And that's a great tool for you to see on paper what someone's capacity is. I would also say, though, that if we think about all the different pieces of a pie and identifying major donors, the wealth screen is really just one. And for us, it's a pretty small one. You want to figure out who your best donors are. Look at the folks who give to you today, and then sit down with a group of your most trusted advisors, meaning people who are big donors to you or people who are really well known in your community who know your donors, and do some peer rating. Ask them to rate capacity on a scale. Ask them to rate affinity. One of the things that you would say, well, what? How do we do that, or what does that even mean? At the end of this, you're going to have the ability, and we're going to get the names of everybody who attends today, and we're going to send you something that we call our major gift solicitation kit. And so you're going to have some really good tools and worksheets and things in there that we use on a daily basis to help with your major gift program. And if there's something that's not in there that you heard today and you want more discussion about, email me. Just email me and we can hop on a call and I can share some more detail with you. So as we think about the how for major gifts, identifying the best people to talk to is step one. Step two is really spending the time on the cultivation. We always say this in fundraising. I'm sure many of you have heard or said this yourself. If you want money, ask for feedback. If you want feedback, ask for money. Donors are going to give more, and we've seen that happen, especially during the pandemic, when we engage them and really have a conversation with them about what's important to them. That's the essence of fundraising. I know that's not something that any of you don't already know, but I think it's a good reminder as we sit down to talk to major gift owners. It's not about us, it's about them and the impact that they want to have. The moves management piece of this is really so critical. It takes at least 7 to 8 major gift interactions, personal interactions, before we get someone close to being able to be ready for a gift. So you really got to work through that process and make sure that you're tracking as you go. Uh, you're again going back to the idea that, who are our major donors, who are our campaign donors? Well, they're typically one and the same. And involving your board is another great way for you to identify potential major donors. Um, I will say this is a piece of advice for you: take it or leave it. You start talking about the idea of major gifts and the potential for a campaign with your board, you're probably going to have some board members who start to get nervous and start to say, "Oh, I don't know if we should do that." And that might be because a lot of times major donors, or I should say board members, are oftentimes not going to be your major donors. And I feel pretty strongly, and we as a firm feel pretty strongly, that you don't try to put a square peg in a round hole. I wouldn't expect that your board is always going to be the group that's going to do the bulk of this work for you. Don't be surprised if your board members, some board members don't want to solicit. Don't be surprised if they feel like fundraising is not part of their job, even if it was one of those characteristics that you had and that you told them about when you recruited them. We find that a lot of board members just don't want to do this. And we think it's okay because we want to put people in front of our donors who really want to do it. Well, can you really think about a campaign right now, or can you really do major giving in a pandemic? And we were talking before this about how excited we are that we're starting to come out of a pandemic here, right? We're starting to see hopefully what is the other end of this. I was sharing earlier that I had my first COVID shot this morning, and so far I feel like a bionic man already. Like, I've got this COVID shot, so and the woman who gave me the shot this morning, the nurse actually reached her hand out and shook my hand. And it stunned me at first because I thought, well, what are we doing? And she said, "Congratulations, you're one step closer to being vaccinated." Of course, she had gloves on and all that. But it was kind of a reminder as I think about everything in my life through the lens of major giving. I thought about it, this is, we're in a pandemic. How can you really do that? And can do, what do we think about our donors, and why do we think our donors are going to want to give when we're in a pandemic? Isn't everybody taking a step back and protecting their assets and making sure, kind of hunkering down? Well, I will tell you this, that is absolutely not the case when it comes to our major donors. What we're seeing across our practice, and again, campaigns ranging from $1 million to $950 million. So it's a crazy range of goal amounts there, and we're all in the middle. Like, we have them just all over the place there. But here's some universal truths that we're hearing from our major donors who are giving bigger gifts than we ever expected and anticipated. One, big donors are tired of the pandemic. We're all tired of the pandemic, but for them, it's different. What's different about it is the messaging around help us get through the pandemic, the messaging about we're in this together and we can survive this, and this idea of emergency giving, that's starting to lose its impact. Or I would even say, I'd go a step further and say it's lost its impact on major donors. They're still giving. We still know there's critical needs, right? The frontline stuff are still there. But here's where donors are really starting to get excited. They are looking for, past the pandemic, what are you going to do to be a stronger, more sustainable organization when this pandemic is over? We have seen from during the pandemic, independent schools, lots of conservation and land trusts, museums, cultural organizations, all of those types of organizations and others as well that I can't even think of, raise more money than they did pre-pandemic. Now, none of those organizations are on the front line, right? So why are they raising more money? Donors who care about the problem that you solve still care about it. And in fact, what we're hearing from donors is that they care even more because this pandemic has been a lesson to them that says, I want my child to have, or these children to have, a phenomenal education when they can go back to school. I want to make sure that land is protected. So if we ever go through some ridiculousness like this again, that we've got places where we can go and be away from people and still enjoy the world. So donors are caring. They are looking for vision beyond what's happening today. And because of that, organizations are receiving transformational gifts. We're seeing giving at levels we haven't seen in years. We were so surprised. And again, we thought the same thing as we went into last summer and fall. Gosh, it's been a year. It's hard to believe. We are talking about last August and September is when we started to see giving beyond pandemic relief. We started seeing giving for these types of organizations really start to soar. And so we started tracking that as we do every day with all of our campaigns. And we saw more seven-figure gifts than we have seen in the last many, many years combined. And here's why. Again, donors want to see vision moving forward. When we think, well, how is that possible? How do they have money to give? Well, the data, we believe strongly in following the data. The data is pretty convincing. um, there's something called the Fundraising Effectiveness Project, and there's a link to that in at the end of our presentation here, which you'll get a copy of. I highly recommend, if you don't know what the Fundraising Effectiveness Project is, write that down somewhere. Just FEP, put a little asterisk, and go check it out. In Q3 of 2020, and that's the right now, that's the latest statistic that we have. Overall giving was up 7.6%. Well, you might hear through different organizations. I've seen a lot of Chronicle articles that said, well, giving is down and we should be really concerned, and we're seeing this trend. Well, it might be true on in some organizations, but I will tell you this: we track it every single day, and organizations who have continued to raise money during the pandemic have seen an increase. On the flip side of that, and I think what's getting a lot of press, is organizations that stopped fundraising, put everything on pause, and didn't raise money during the pandemic have seen a decrease. It's kind of obvious, right? You didn't raise money, so you're seeing a decrease. Major donors are giving more today. Giving Tuesday was up 25%. And major donors are doing something else that I think is really important for us to think about. You may have seen this, maybe you haven't. We have seen this with donors because we're doing campaign study interviews every day. And so we're talking to donors and we're asking this question. Major donors today, and this is similar to what we saw post 2008, the average number of organizations that major donors that we're working with, particularly, gave prior to the pandemic, they gave major gifts to 5 to 7 organizations in a year. Now, they may not have given as high a gift to every one of those organizations, but a major gift being the threshold for that organization could be 1,000, could be 100,000. They were given to 5 to 7 organizations. What we saw from interviewing donors, and we're still doing this, we just concluded a study that we interviewed 76 donors, 126 people in 76 interviews. And here's what they said: we're now giving to our top 3 organizations. So no longer is it 5 to 7. We've consolidated that number down to 2 to 3 organizations. One is often their church. So we get that. So 2 other organizations are making that list of their major donor and for a major gift. And they said, because we want to have more impact. And so we can do that by giving to less organizations. We're having a bigger impact. So here's what I would challenge you is, are you going to be one of those organizations that get on that list of 2 to 3? If you're going to be one of those organizations, it's going to be because you are forward thinking, you have continued to raise money, and you are loving on this donors genuinely today, tomorrow. You are helping them understand how focused you are on sustainability and growth. I don't mean that you're focused on growing in size or growing in programs, but you are not focused on retracting. You're not hunkering down. You're not surviving. You're not getting through this. You're thinking forward. That's messaging. If you're getting that messaging out there, that's what donors are going to respond to. And that's how you're going to be one of those 3 organizations that major gift donor is going to give to. What do we expect to keep seeing, and why have we seen major donors giving well? Well, one is we always see a correlation to the stock market. Okay. We think the stock market, we may have a few dips here and there, but by and far, 2021 outlook is that the stock market is going to continue to perform. We're seeing more gifts today of appreciated stock. So that says to us that donors are really thinking about and leveraging those investments to give more, meaning that they're not keeping as much. Secondly, because of the economic recovery, donors have the ability now to deduct even more of their gift than they did pre-pandemic. Well, they're riding that wave, and so are we as organizations. If they can deduct 100% of their adjusted gross income, well, their CPAs and their financial planners are telling them give more. You're going to give it to the government, or do you want to give it to an organization? Well, donors are really stepping up and saying, this is my chance now to have a much bigger impact than my gift would have had, because the government doesn't credit so much back. So while they get something, you get more as well. And the stimulus. The idea is that our economy, and everyone was worried about what's the economy going to do if we have an administration change. Well, lo and behold, we've had an administration change, and we're still early into that administration, but major donors have not taken a step back. Right, the election happened in November, even though we didn't inaugurate the new president until January. Okay, we saw increased giving. We have seen increased giving from November, from after the election through today, in the campaigns and major gift initiatives that we're doing. Now, we don't have the data across the country yet from that because it's too soon and we haven't collected all that data. But we're coming up on the end of the first quarter of 2021. And what I can tell you, and what every organization we're raising money with right now can tell you, is that donors are continuing to give at higher levels. All right. So if you're thinking about, is it possible, or what should we think about if we want to do a campaign, I'm going to walk you through 4 benchmarks. I'm a visual learner, so I'm going to tell you this in a couple of different ways if you want to, in your head, illustrate what we're going to talk about. One would be 4 pillars. And then I also like to say, we're going to talk about a chair. And a chair has 4 legs. And we're going to talk about how sturdy each of these legs are. And we're going to call this chair a campaign. So we're going to talk about the 4 legs of this chair and the benchmarks that we use to work with organizations to say you're ready to embark on a campaign. Number 1, it's vision. If you're thinking about major gift fundraising or a campaign, is your vision big enough? Let me say that again. Is your vision big enough? I told you, donors, major gift donors, are not looking at just sustainability. That's critical, and they're expecting you to do it, and they're asking really hard questions to make sure that you are doing that, but they're looking at big vision. What are your priorities for doing better, having a bigger impact on your mission, growing your donors, right? Serving more of whatever it is that your mission is. That's what donors want to hear about today. If you're thinking about a campaign and you're thinking, okay, we might want to build a building and we've got some programs and some endowment, here's what donors are really giving towards today. First on this list, and this, I hope this blows your mind because it's been blowing our mind for the last 9 months now. Donors are giving big money for endowment. Endowment. I don't know about you, but when an organization comes to us and they say, we'd like to raise money to build a new food bank, and also we want to raise money to put in our endowment for sustainability, I get super excited about, yeah, a new building. I can see donors are going to love that. And they say endowment, and I go, endowment's not sexy, right? It's not shiny. It's not new. It's not vertical. It's not a new building. You can't walk in it. But dang it, endowment's really important. Well, here's the lesson from the pandemic. Major donors have said endowment is one of those ways that helps you sustain yourself for the long term. So we're including endowment in our major gift efforts today. In our campaigns, we're testing the vision for endowment. And you guys, it's coming back really high. We've got university, school, 2 museums, and three community service organizations right now launching campaigns, and they're all including endowment as a major campaign priority. Now, I mean, you might always raise money for endowment on the side, like plan giving or through some passive way, but literally they are going out and making asks for endowment, and donors are responding really well. Big donors want your priorities to be urgent. to be forward thinking. They want them to be logical and make business sense. They're going to ask you tough questions. And as they're asking those tough questions, it gives you the opportunity to really have a conversation and to get their feedback. One thing we found is that during the pandemic, donors have had more time on their hands and they've been willing to spend that time talking to us. And the result of that has been, I mean, our us meaning our the campaigns that we're working with, is the result is that we've gotten a lot of great expertise that we wouldn't have typically gotten pre-pandemic because these donors have had time on their hands. Again, going back to the trends for 2021, what are we looking at? Endowment, sustainability, but maintaining that building after it's built. So really, that forward thinking strategy is what donors are really looking for. So the first leg on this chair is your vision. Do you have a vision that is big? Is it forward thinking? Is it based in reality? And can you justify it from a business perspective? And is it going to have significant impact on your mission? What donors are not giving to today is we have a bridge the gap fund. We have a gap in our operating budget. I'm going to tell you right now, you want to take the wind out of the sails of a major donor, ask them for that. If that's really what you need, you've got to find a better way to say it than we have a gap. You've got to be able to talk about that missed opportunity that you could be achieving, how you could have grown with if you had that opportunity and really leverage it that way. Vision number 2, confidence and trust. Major donors want confidence in the organization and its mission and the impact of that mission in staff leadership and in board leadership. I love this. We talk about this all the time internally. You wouldn't want to buy stock in a company that wasn't well run. The same thing about from donors investing in a campaign or your organization as a whole is no different. We're seeing that major donors want to know who the board is. They want to have confidence in both staff and board leadership. I will tell you that as we look at these 4 chair legs, these 4 pillars, this is often the one that's the shakiest. And it's because many times major donors don't know who the board members are. And they bring that up. And why do we care? Why do you think it matters? Well, a major donor, just like an investor in a company, is going to want to make sure that that gift that they give, that investment that they make, is going to be used wisely. Love Tesla or don't love Tesla, right? You either Elon Musk, you think he's this crazy inspirational guy that is changing the world, or you think he's a lunatic. That's what donors are. There's one of 2 things that donors think about him. And depending on what you think, it's going to be whether or not you want to invest in Tesla. Well, donors feel the same way. They want to know that if they're making an investment, that the people who are making decisions about how to use those dollars are the right people at the table. So the campaign we often find that we need to raise the visibility of the board before we really get into all of the fundraising for a campaign. Good news is when you get into a campaign, the first phase of that is really the planning, and you have time to do that. That trust, though, is critical. Donors are paying more attention today. They're asking harder questions. They want to know what your impact is. They don't want you to spew off a bunch of statistics about programs and things like that. They want to hear the testimonials. They want the emotional side of it coupled with the idea that you can run a business. That's important. And then the idea that cultivation and stewardship are absolutely keys to this trust. And you got to make sure as you're cultivating and stewarding your donors that it's not around the gift, it's around the donor, right? It's making sure, and we all do this every day. We think about it every day, and some of us go, well, that's obvious. Well, I'll tell you this, donors don't think it's obvious. And donors say to us very often, this organization does not do a good job of keeping me in the loop and making me part of what's going on throughout the year. I get a thank you and I get some trinket or I get my name on a wall. But what I really want is to be a partner. So think about how do you make that donor feel like they're a partner as they are an investor. They're an investor and a partner. All right, we got two legs on this chair. What's the third? Well, This one seems obvious a lot of times, right? Is, are your donors going to finance the vision? They may love the idea that you need to do this. These priorities might be important, but are they important enough for your donor to make them one of their three giving priorities over the next year or 2 or 3 years, or however long they're going to be paying off their pledge? If they feel like you are one of those top three, then they're going to stretch in their giving. And what I mean by that is often they're going to put another zero on the end of that. A $1 million campaign or a $950 million campaign, you guys, the gift chart is the same. You got to have donors at the top of that gift chart. You've got to have somebody willing to give 5 or 10% of that goal if it's going to be achievable. The campaign study that's done is critical to that point, because we need to find out. Oftentimes, we love to set a goal for an annual fundraising goal or a campaign goal. We set it based on how much, let's say it's a campaign, on how much the architect said the building's going to cost. Well, I got news for you. Today, donors could care less what the architect says the building's going to cost. They're going to tell you how much they're willing to finance in a campaign. And you need to listen to them first. Before you set your goal, you need to listen to your donors, because your donors are going to tell you how much of a priority you are compared to every other organization that they're giving to right now. And yeah, you may say to yourself, well, I don't know if we'll ever do a campaign, because there are lots of organizations in the Midlands that are going to be doing campaigns. How could we ever get on that list? Well, I would say to you, there's never going to be a time when other organizations aren't doing a campaign. So don't let that stop you. What you got to have are these four pillars in place. You got to have a compelling vision. You got to have a good, urgent reason to raise money. You got to have a mission that has some impact, and you need to be able to show that. Third, you need to have donors who are willing to give, and you really need to think. I think it's super important, and we see this every day. Listen to the feedback that you get from donors. This idea of having a conversation with them and getting their perspective, it's not just a going through the motion that we have to do. We've gotten great feedback that have allowed us to really have bigger impact on the organizations that we're working with. Like, say, for instance, we have an organization that was thinking that they had to build this new building. And that was the only thing, that they had architectural drawings, and it was the only way they were going to go forward. Through the campaign study, we found out that there were several donors who really felt very strongly that this organization could use an existing storefront, move in quickly, do some renovations, and start to have impact today and not have that cost of that overhead cost. Well, for this organization, that wasn't something they'd ever thought about, because why would you ever think about that? You need a building, let's build it. Well, because they listened to the feedback, there were donors they interviewed who brought some other donors in, and lo and behold, they got the entire space and all the renovations completely donated. The dollars they were able to raise in the campaign filled that building with all of the participants and the programs and the outcomes. That wouldn't have happened had they not taken the time to listen to those donors ahead of time. So your donors are going to tell you how much they're willing to give, and if they're willing to make you one of those three organizations that they're going to give the most money to over this next couple of years. And lastly, and boy, I can't tell you how important this is, and you probably know this from your daily life and fundraising as well. Will volunteers roll up their sleeves? The most impactful ask that you're going to have in any campaign is going to be that volunteer sitting across the I'll say it, the parent sitting across from with another family and saying, this project is so important to us. We have given $100,000 to this. We'd like to ask you to make a gift to this campaign at that same level. Would you consider making a leadership gift and join us in making $100,000 commitment over the next 3 years? Nothing more impactful. We do it every day. Donors see us as the paid fundraisers. But when we have volunteers doing that, people who are respected by these donors, the impact is greater, but really the amount that we can raise is so much more important. This also goes back to boards. If you think you're going to do a major gift initiative or a campaign and your board is primarily going to run this for you, you're going to lean on them, you're probably going to be pretty disappointed. It's because a lot of board members, they think their time is given by being at board meetings. They didn't sign up to be a fundraiser. They have no interest in fundraiser. They're terrified about fundraising, and they're just not a good fit. And frankly, you probably have board members you wouldn't want in the room to make an ask. That's why volunteers are so important. We asked this question: would you be willing to be part of this campaign? Now, again, this is after they've said yes, that they're going to make it a personal commitment to it, and that this will be something that they are going to stretch in giving. Then we say, are you willing to roll up your sleeves? Would you be willing to help us by doing solicitations for this campaign? Like, we put it out there, and we get really excited if we can find at least 20% of those big donors we interview who say yes. We know we have enough of a volunteer prospect pool that we can pull off this campaign. Some of those might be board members. I've done lots of campaigns in my career where not a single board member made a single ask. You know what? It's okay. Personally, I think it's terrible, but at the end of the day, we still pulled off the campaign. And we bring those board members in to be volunteers for stewardship. And hopefully we can get them involved in some way. And maybe we can even use this campaign to show them that it's not so scary and terrible to help get out there and be part of asks. So, again, in 2021 and beyond, we think there are going to be some parts of new normals that we're going to need to get used to and we're going to need to adjust to for the long haul. One of those is virtual communication. We were talking, Mary Dell, before, Melissa, we were talking about this before about how we think that we hope anyway that we'll do a lot of this virtual communication even after the pandemic is over. And because, first of all, it's so convenient. Secondly, you have so much more flexibility in connecting with donors, right? We don't have to worry about where we can meet and when. Not to say that the meeting in person, we love that. We're fundraisers. We get energy from our donors often, right? But we know now that communication and virtual communication is something that is very common now. Donors are used to it, and donors are going to expect more communication out of you moving forward. That's going to be a trend that I think we as a sector are going to have to shift to. We're going to have our major donors aren't going to be satisfied with a newsletter from time to time. They want to be able to pick up the phone. They want to be able to Zoom with you. They want to be able to have access to your executive leadership when they want it. And you know what? That's what investors do. And that's what they're used to. And we've set that norm now because we've done much more outreach as a sector during the pandemic. Also think that increased donor engagement is going to continue. We think there's going to be a slump at the end of this, towards the middle and end of the summer, because people can start getting out as more people are vaccinated. Wealthy people are going to go on vacation. They're going to get away for a little while. But here's what we think: they're going to come back renewed, excited, and ready to support your missions at the levels they were doing during the pandemic. They're just going to do it with a renewed sense of energy. That's our prediction. And we think we're going to be right there. So, how do you know if you've got these four pillars, these legs of the chair that are solid? How do you know that? Well, we feel very strongly that the first step is you're thinking about this kind of major fundraising, especially if you're thinking about a campaign, is you need to do a campaign study. You might have heard of them as a feasibility study or a planning study. We call them a campaign study. It's phase one of the campaign. It's so important to us, in fact, in our work, that we will not do a campaign with you. We won't come alongside you, let you pay us money to do a campaign unless we do a campaign study first. And that's because it tells us so much. It's not just yes or no, can we do this? It is priming the pump for every single donor we're going to ask during that campaign. It's getting so much feedback about our priorities and our approach and our goal amount and our timing and our strategy and our volunteers and our impact. All of those things we get incredible feedback about that are going to help shape not just the campaign, not just our major gift program, but it's going to help shape our organization for years to come. It's going to help identify campaign leadership. If we don't do this campaign study, it's hard to identify those people who say, I'll go out and help you raise money. This is a natural way to do it. It also helps us reorient those priorities. We may think the most important priority is X, but our donors may come back and say, it's Y. We think that new building, our donors may say that's important, but only if you do endowment as well, because you've got to make sure that you have a sustainable path to manage and keep that building. So the study is absolutely critical. And here's the great thing about a campaign study. Your campaign will be shorter. It will take you less time to raise your goal, whether it's $1 million or $950 million. It will take you less time to raise that goal if you do a campaign study, because you have primed the pump. You have gotten your donors excited. Imagine the end of the conversation that we have with a donor on your behalf. And we've asked the donor if this is something that they will make one of their top 3 giving priorities over the next 3 years. And they say yes. And we ask them, we show them a gift chart. Let's pretend like we want to do a $1 million campaign. We show them a gift chart that has ranges of gift for $1 million. And they say to us, we'd be somewhere in that $50,000 to $100,000 range. That donor walks out of that interview thinking in their mind, we need to put aside $50,000 to $100,000, or maybe more. That's possible too. But they walk out of that thinking, hey, this organization is going to do a campaign. They're on our top 3 list. We better put that money aside. So now these donors are excited, and they're waiting for you to make that decision to go forward. So if you're going to do a campaign, do the study ahead of time. It is just so important for you to do. What if some of the answers to these 4 legs? What if you have a wobbly leg or a leg that's missing altogether? Can you still do a campaign? Chances are yes, you can, because the study helps us identify where those challenges or those areas of weaknesses are. But then we now can build a plan, a strategy to overcome those things. And so if we know what we need to work on, we can work on it while we're getting ready to launch a campaign. Let me give a very practical example. A lot of studies come back and say there's not a high visibility of the board, so I don't really know them, so I can't really tell you if I trust them or not. Well, we can start immediately, even during the interview phase of the study, we can start raising the profile of board members. We can start highlighting them. We can start finding out more about them. We can start connecting them with donors, right? Those things we want to do anyway, but now it gives us a reason and a chance and the opportunity, specifically with these donors who say, I don't know the board very well. I now have an opportunity to say, hey, big donor, I'd love for you to come have coffee, or I'd love to have a virtual coffee with you at our board chair. That big donor is going to say, fantastic, let's do it. And you can automatically, immediately start overcoming those kinds of challenges. Next, okay, so if you're thinking about a campaign, or if you don't know whether you should be thinking about a campaign right now, or even major gift initiative, right? Meaning that you want to grow or start a major gift program. First thing you need to do is sit down and write out a list of priorities you would be raising money for. Okay. I'd say my suggestion to you is dream big. Put those things on there that are most urgent first, and then put those things on there that are the wouldn't it be great if we had. Put all of those things on the list. Now, I don't think you'll necessarily test all of those things, but you need that whole list. And then walk through that list and prioritize that list. From your perspective, what are the things on that list that are going to have the most impact? So you prioritize them. And then start to share those with a group of your most in the know constituents. And by the way, I'm not just saying board members. I think this is a chance for you to engage donors. They don't have to be your biggest donors, but they can be people who are healthy donors that you really trust and you would like their feedback, and people you think might have a lot more capacity, just aren't giving at their capacity today. Ask them, say, we're thinking about some priorities. I'd like to get your feedback on this list of priorities. I just want to hear from you about things that you think you would see as important for us to address. Start the conversation. I think you could be surprised if you haven't done this before. I think you could be surprised at how many of these folks, if there really are, if you've really done a good job of finding people who are engaged with you, that they're going to say yes. Now, if you're reaching out to people who just have a lot of money but don't know you, don't be surprised when they say no. We're talking about people who already have buy in. Those are the people that you want to reach out to. If you're thinking about doing something that's major, I would highly suggest to you to think about bringing in an outside consultant. I get it. Sounds salesy to you, but here's the reason for doing that. You need that outside expertise. You need that independence that a consultant can bring, and you need those extra sets of hands that consultants can bring for you. There are some really different approaches to consulting and to how campaigns can be managed. So I would really encourage you to think about the kind of approach that is most suited for you. Do you need more of a coach? Do you need more of a hands-on helping you do it day by day and getting the work done? Or are you trying to outsource this and hoping a third party will do it? Well, there's all three of those. We're right there in the middle. We're the partner that comes in and helps do most of the work and set you up to make the asks and then make sure that you're equipped, trained, ready to go, and following up. But that approach may not be for you. So you've got to figure out what approach is best for you, and you do that by talking to several firms and figuring out which model is going to work best for you. Now, as you think about the campaign study, we've got something that you'll receive in the major gift solicitation kit. We've got a white paper that's called the 4 benchmarks that will predict your campaign success. Start there because again, it puts into on paper and something that's shareable with other people in your organization, things that we've talked about today. If you've heard this and you think I got questions, you got my email right here. Again, you'll get a copy of this. Jessica Browning on our team, she's another principal who works alongside me on a daily basis to help manage the practice of our firm. And then Rachel Santos. Rachel is on our client team, and Rachel's great at pulling together our resources and finding things for you that will be helpful to answer your questions. And lastly, and then I'm going to take all the questions that you have and get into all the discussion that you want. I referred to a lot of different resources as I was walking you through these remarks. What you'll get in the PDF that we'll send to you are links. These are all links that will allow you to go to these different resources. Some of those are blogs and white papers that we've written, but some of these are outside as well. I would encourage you to take those, digest them, share them with others, because I think as you start to put all of this together, as you start to really bring into focus what the fundraising landscape for major gifts and capital campaigns are going to look like over the next year and beyond, I think you're going to see that there's a really positive picture coming into focus for you. If you haven't already been doing this, there's a lot of opportunity. If you have been doing this, keep doing it and keep growing it. Don't pull back because donors don't want you to pull back. Man, I feel like I just started talking and it's like threw it all up at you. So I know I gave you an awful lot to hear. I would love to hear questions and comments too. And you don't have to just chat them. You want to start with questions, Mary Dale? Would that be helpful?
Jim, I just want to say, like, I really feel like I've been to fundraiser church, and I
Oh,
need to like say, Amen. Thank you
that's
for the
awesome.
blessing of this message.
I get a little animated and excited.
And I'm an Episcopalian. We don't like hands up for anything.
That's
And
right.
for me to feel that is really compelling.
Good.
So I do want to thank you for being here. And the floor is open for
Yeah.
questions, comments. anybody else who wants to jump in.
I'll there's one, Elizabeth. You ask a great question. When talking about major donors, are we only including individuals, or are we talking about major corporate donors? All right. Well, I'm going to get back on a soapbox here for a second, okay? Because the majority of dollars that are giving every year, and in the U.S., and this has been true for so many years. I sit on the editorial board of Giving USA, the report that comes out every year. I help write that report, and I can tell you, I know this data inside and out. The majority of dollars, 86 cents on every dollar, comes from individuals. I go where the money is. I follow individuals. During the pandemic, lots of corporate donors have had to cut back. They haven't had corporate dollars. They're not giving as much as they used to. Now, I will tell you, if they're giving and you're one of those organizations, you clearly have a mission that they see as being very valuable. I say this, I think the majority of your work needs to go towards individuals. If you have corporate donors who support you today, continue to work with them. But I think the expectation over the next few years, particularly that corporate donors are going to be able to give more, I think it's the wrong expectation. You're going to have the biggest return by focusing on individual donors. That includes outright gifts, those investment gifts of pledges over time, and plan gifts. Think about plan gifts too. Donors are really, this pandemic has made donors really think about their life beyond the grave and how they want to have impact even after they're dead. Planned giving is something you should be thinking about today. All right, other questions?
Shrindria, I think you had a question.
Yes, thank you, Mary Bell, Dell, for unmuting me. Jim, I just wanted to agree with you. As a pastor, I wanted to say amen. I wanted to be able to audibly say amen as
That is
well.
awesome.
And this is coming from a pastor. So thank you so much.
Well, that means I am truly am honored for you to be able to say that. Thank you. That really does. I really feel honored to have that.
Yes, you have shared the fundraising gospel with us today for Major Give. So I am going to take this and we're going to implement it. I have seen in our community, we run a transition home. So it's not a shelter. I always have to say it's not a shelter. It's a transition home for women. And I have seen people during this pandemic step up to the plate and really give above and beyond what we've asked of them. But it's been about the story. I couldn't talk about anything else. Yes, my utility bills were increasing because all the women were home. They weren't at work. They had all lost their jobs, but they did not want to hear about that. They wanted to hear about women now being able to pivot and go to Zoom meetings and us bringing tutors in to help the women learn about Zoom and all these platforms. And so me saying I need more computers, I need headsets, I need higher internet speed. They bought into that, to the story, not that the utility and the water bill will increase. So
no, everyone knows you have those. It's the outcome. You have right now, you have a launch pad. I would absolutely take what you have right now and I would think about sit down and do that exercise. And you probably have already done it. I mean, you could spurt out of your head, I'm sure, all the things you need. Leverage that because now donors are looking beyond that. You started it now. How do you have even bigger impact? What happens after the pandemic? How do you take the lessons that you've learned and the new reality that you've been able to build, and how do you make that grow? You have a real opportunity there. Yeah. Elizabeth asked a question. I hope I'm not jumping in front of anybody else, but if you've recently finished a capital campaign, how long after the capital campaign would you wait to start prepping the ground for an endowment? Today? Now? I mean, I literally mean that. If you've got people paying off pledges, they're fulfilling them still. I get it. But you probably have people who aren't. And you can start laying the groundwork for endowment. That sustainability, the idea of sustainability is really important. Some donors right now, even with the pledge, would still make a gift to an endowment. And I think you can absolutely start to position our next major need is going to be sustainability. Don't call it an endowment. By the way, you don't ever raise money for an endowment. You raise money for something, right? So for instance, we raise money to make sure that we can put money in the 401ks for the staff and we can do X, Y, and Z. That happens to be in an endowment, but you're not out there saying we're doing an endowment campaign. That's not the message, right? It goes back to what we just said. It's what that impact is. Another great question. How does one pay for a campaign study or a consulting firm if one has little money to spare? I get it. It's an investment. What I would say to you is this, and again, I hope it doesn't come across as self-serving. I can tell you that for the campaigns that we do, the campaigns we do raise more money than they would on their own. Those additional dollars go well beyond what you're going to pay us to do the study or the campaign. So you might think about the fact that it's an investment up front when you're working with a consulting firm. But I will tell you this, you raise more money, it will pay off and bring you more money than just what the campaign firm cost. It's worth it. Again, it's a return on that investment that you're not going to get if you do this on your own. But again, you got to find the right firm that works for you. You need to be aware it's not, I mean, they're not dirt cheap. If you've got if you get a bid out from a consulting firm and it's dirt cheap and all the other bids or proposals that you get are more right here and this one's down here, there's a reason this one's down here. And that's because they're probably not going to do much work. And so that's not a great return on investment. I caution you to do that. Here's another thing I would do if I was you. I would talk to your peer organizations, talk to other AFP members, find out who they worked for, find out bad experiences that they've had and why were they bad. That's always a great place to start. Share what you know with others if they ask.
What is a pricing structure that you could expect? Like, is it you pay part for the feasibility study and then part along? How does that work for
Yeah,
folks who don't know?
that's a great question. So yes, so generally here's how it works. You're going to pay a fee for the campaign study. Um, we feel pretty strongly that it's a fee, that it's one fee, and that fee is. I'll give you an example. Our typical study is about 12 to 16 weeks. Not about. It is 12 to 16 weeks, and there's a few factors that help us figure out if it's 12 or 16. Um, and so let's pretend like it's a 16-week study. That's 4 months, right? You're going to pay us. Our fee is going to be divided over those 4 months. Okay, that's pretty simple. We don't charge you for each individual interview. And those are kinds of questions that you need to look at, because if you've got a firm that's going to charge you to write the case and to do each interview, which we see out there all the time, beware, because it might look good on paper that they're going to charge you X dollars, but when at the end of it, when they've done all this other work, it's actually 3 or 4 times that. So find the firm that's going to charge you a flat fee. In a campaign, you should be looking for a firm that charges you a monthly retainer. It is not based on how much you raise. We know taking a percentage of dollars raised is an unethical practice. The problem is there are firms that do that practice, and it's a real shame because it gives all of us a really bad name. AFP International says that you should pay no more than 15 cents on the dollar for a capital campaign firm. And that is from start to finish. I would say to you, you need to be under 10 cents. We would, I can't think of a campaign where we have come in at more than 10 cents on the dollar. And I would argue, and you'll have board members that say, well, why in the world would we want to pay a firm 10 cents and they're going to give us, a dollar? We're losing 10 cents. You all are fundraisers. If you don't do capital fundraising every day, it's probably a skill that's not sharp for you. It's what a firm does. It's all a capital campaign firm does every day. We know how to raise more money because we do it every day. If you've got a unique situation, it's super unique to you. Right now, we're doing 16 campaigns across the country. It's probably not unique to us. That's the benefit of a firm, is that the experience, and they see it and they can get things done. We like to take experience we have across our sector and use things we've seen in the university, use it for a food bank campaign, because you know what? There's a lot of great strategies that we can put and use in all of our different kinds of campaigns. So it is a flat fee, and it is be expecting to pay a monthly retainer. And it also just know what that level of engagement is going to be. For us, we don't we can't tell you how long your campaign is going to be until we finish the campaign study, because it depends on how excited your donors are, how ready they are to make a gift. Because what might happen is you might have donors that say these are really critical priorities that you need to address, but then they might say on that third pillar, they might say, well, right now you're not one of my top three. And where our follow-up question is going to be is, what would motivate you to make this one of your top three? Well, I need to know more information. I really just don't know them very well. I need to know more. Ah, that may say to us, hey, we've got a lot of people who just need deeper relationship. We're going to have to take longer up front on cultivation. So that might make it a 15-month campaign instead of a 12. But that comes out of the campaign study. That's how you find out how long a campaign's going to be. I would just, this is selfish, but I'll say this to you. Be careful when you go and get an estimate. You can get a range for your campaign. Do ask what typical fees are from the firms you're talking to, but don't expect any firm's going to be able to say to you, I know we're going to do a 12-month campaign and it's going to be this. Because if they do, they haven't done their homework yet enough to know that. And you're probably not getting honest advice in that case. So that's for, use that for whatever it's worth. Use that. Unfortunately, we happen to see that across the country today, and I think it's a shame, because I think the steps in this are really important. But that it's a retainer, flat fee for the study, retainer on a monthly basis for the campaign. All right. Other questions? So looking through the chat. All right. Lots of people had to take off. I was reading all the notes there. That's great. Well, so next steps. I'll just quickly say that as we wrap up. Look for our team to send you our major gift solicitation kit. If it doesn't have everything in there that we talked about today, and there was something we talked about that you want more information about, remember that one of those documents is the presentation slide deck itself. My email is in there. Shoot me an email. I can either hop on the phone and we can talk about it, or if it's a resource that I can send samples of, I'll do that as well. But don't hesitate. And if you've got things that you just want to talk about, my team is always willing to hop on the phone and just do a quick strategy session with you, and give you feedback. If you're thinking about things and you don't quite know what to do next, call us. We don't charge for those, you guys. We know that if we as a sector and we as a state of South Carolina are fundraising better, then it helps all of us. So it's our way of giving back. We started doing it really during the pandemic. And frankly, selfishly, it's been so much fun for us to be able to meet new friends that we're going to keep doing that well beyond the pandemic. So I invite you to take advantage of it.
Well, I want to wrap up, and Jim, thank you. And again, thank the Winkler Group for sponsoring this workshop, and especially for contributing to our scholarship fund so that we can work to increase equity in the field of fund development. And I want to thank those of you who are able to stay on, even though we went well past our hour. Yeah. And for those of you who are watching the recording, we hope that you will join us live next month for our panel on corporate philanthropy and trends in corporate philanthropy. So
fantastic.
That should be really interesting.
And then buy these headsets.
I
have no interest in this, by the way.
It'll just make your life better, and we all need to do something to make life better these days.
This headset I wear, I love. We were talking about that before we started. You guys, it's been such a pleasure. I look forward to connecting with you in the future. Bye, Aaron.
Thanks, everybody.
We'll see you guys. Take care. Bye-bye.